I've received a message from Brandon Lewis, who sadly has been having some technical difficulties. And his message reads, "Apologies that my broadband is failing me this evening, so I'm unable to join you. I do want to thank the British Tamil Conservatives for everything that you do to all your members too. You play a key part in election after election and helps to make a real difference to get candidates elected to ensure we have a Conservative that can deliver on our manifesto, and next year we will have a huge set of elections in which you can help, and I'm sure that you will." Now, our next speaker, of course, knows a lot about campaign elections. It's Robert Halfon, the Member of Parliament for Harlow and the Chair of the Education Select Committee. Over to you, Rob.
Oh, well, good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here on Zoom, at least. It's very, very sad not to be doing a Tamil event at the Conservative Party conference because it's part of it's become an institution of the Conservative Party conference, and one of the biggest fringe events. And I hope very much that we're all together next year, both celebrating climbing down from the Everest coronavirus mountain, but also together as friends, chatting, speaking, and perhaps having something to eat together. I just want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for all the support you give to Conservatives. You're not just a British Tamil organisation, you're a British Tamil Conservative organisation, and I don't think there is a finer campaigning force than the British Tamil Conservatives across the different groups that support the mainstream Conservative Party in our country. I mean, you are an electoral force to be reckoned with, and you're responsible for so many MPs getting elected, and I want to thank you personally for everything you've done in my constituency to support me and in many others. Something I deeply care about because of my Jewish background is about genocide of peoples, and I had the opportunity to give the closing speech at the Tamil Genocide Recognition Conference held at the Houses of Parliament last October, and it was a pretty harrowing, if not horrific, to listen to some of the personal experiences shared by the other speakers. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. In every Tamil meeting that I addressed, the Tamils were subjected to genocide. 146,000 Tamils were killed or disappeared. 280,000 put behind barbed wire and treated inhumanely in scenes that we thought would end after the Second World War. And there must be recognition of the genocide that took place against the Tamil people. And it's the duty of all free thinking politicians, people who love democracy, who love ideals, to stand up for the Tamils and recognise the genocide that took place, because we must call it for what it is. The human rights abuses that continue are pretty shocking, and there must be accountability through an international mechanism to ensure that justice is delivered. And of course, that recognition of the rights of the Tamil people in Sri Lanka, including your right to autonomy. It is not much to ask, a recognition of the genocide, human rights that every citizen should be allowed, equality of opportunity, self-determination, proper justice brought to those who carried out war crimes. They should be brought before the international court without a shadow of a doubt, because those people seem to have got away with it, and they should be held accountable. So I will continue to do all I can to campaign for these things, to work with the British Tamil Conservatives for justice, for self-determination, for recognition of the genocide, for human rights and equality of opportunity. And in the Jewish religion, we often have a saying next year in Jerusalem. So I will end saying next year at party conference, live at your fringe meeting, with together once again as friends. So I wish you all well and look forward to seeing you soon in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much again for words that we'll all be echoing throughout this evening. Our next speaker is a long-term friend of the Tamil community. It is Jackie Doyle-Price, the Member of Parliament for Thurrock.
Thank you, Mario, and it's very nice, as usual, to be with you at your annual conference event. I have to say, although this is a virtual conference, I've still managed to catch a conference cold, but there we are. That's some things can still be transmitted virtually. Obviously, the year we've had since we last met, wow, so much has happened. What a year. But we seem to say that every time we get together over the last few years. But obviously we did have that general election in December, and you've all been very used to me coming to you and saying, you know, thanking you for all the support you've been giving me and begging you for more, because I've gone from having the 4th most marginal seat in the House of Commons to the 6th marginal seat, then to the 8th most marginal seats, and all my majority of my first 3 elections didn't add up to 1,000. So it is with great pleasure that, thanks to all your help at the time, in December, I was elected with a majority of 11,500, and I now have the 200th safest Conservative seat. So thank you very much, and I out with you all to support candidates in other marginal seats, given that my need is no longer so great as it once was. But I certainly would not still be here were it not for the support of the panel Conservatives, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And you know, it comes now. We need to start really making sure that now when we have a majority of government, we can start delivering on some of the commitments we made to you. And we've just watched the film, which showed actually David Cameron as Prime Minister really took the agenda of the Tamils further, really gave that challenge through the Commonwealth to the government. We started to actually raise these issues about the fact this is a genocide, there needs to be some reparation, there needs to be some justice. Now, obviously, we've been rather taken up with Brexit and COVID, frankly, which has stolen the government from much of its bandwidth. And although COVID is going to be with us for quite some time, hopefully Brexit will be less so, but we really do need to start being less focused on those current problems, but really re-establish Great Britain's place in the world as a focus for freedom, for democracy, for the rule of law, but most importantly for humanity. You know, that's the thing that made me proudest of being British, is that we've always been on the right side of history. We've always been fighting for human rights, and we really need to start showing that global leadership again, and not least in Sri Lanka. So obviously we have made our commitments to you. I'm very pleased to hear that Tariq really outlined that ongoing commitment, and it's for your friends in Parliament, people like me and the rest of the MPs that you're hearing from, to make sure that we hold this government's feet to the fire on those commitments, and we do deliver. But as always, it's great to see you all. It's such a shame I can't see you in person. I'm sure we'll all miss each other. But here's hoping that this time next year, we'll have a physical meeting, and we can all have a good chat again. Nice to see you all. Thank you
very much, Jackie. And if the testament of the hard work of the British Tamil Conservatives was not summarised well enough, bringing up her majority and getting sole credit, I think, is a grand achievement for the organisation. Of course, next up on the subject of justice, we have possibly the most expert we have this evening. We have the Secretary of State for Justice, Robert Buckland. Over to you, Robert.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Mario, and I hope everybody can hear me clearly. I think that despite the virtual nature of our gathering this year, in a way, we've been able to reach even more people than ever before. And I was struck by the fact that for a fringe meeting I did yesterday, we had over 2,500 people viewing, which is quite unlike any Conservative fringe meeting I've ever been to before. And that may be the experience of my parliamentary colleagues as well. And I think that whatever happens, wherever we are this time next year, I think an element of the virtual is going to become normal, and it's going to become part of our conference deliberations, whether in the main hall or on the fringe, because there are many thousands of fellow Conservatives who have not and are not and will not be able to join us for conference, but who will be able to come and join us virtually. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Oh, fine. Okay, I was just checking in. And I think that, this year, as we deal with what my colleagues have talked about as the huge challenges of COVID, I think the lesson for us as Conservatives, and indeed for us in government, is that the response that we have made to this crisis, particularly with the harnessing of virtual technology, is something that we have to adopt and use and develop. And I'm thinking in particular in our court system, where unlike many other jurisdictions, we kept the lights on by using virtual technology. I don't want to go back to the way things were. I want to see more cases being dealt with virtually. I want to see more administrative hearings being dealt with online, which will free up and clear up, I think, more space, more time to deal with hearings that genuinely have to be held in person, the sort of cases that involve the assessment of evidence, the assessment of the truth of a witness, and indeed the real life experiences, I think, certainly that I've had over the years, that cannot be replicated virtually. But we're investing hugely in technology in our court system, and it is, I think it has been a real example of how, unlike many other parts of the world, we kept things going. One of my colleagues talked about the rule of law just now, and I think in a very powerful way. And as Justice Secretary and Lord Chancellor, representing, as I do, not just the Ministry of Justice, but also the rule of law and the importance of it to our system, that responsibility, I think, falls particularly heavily on my shoulders when I think about the experiences of fellow lawyers in other jurisdictions. I'm thinking particularly of the situation in Hong Kong at the moment with regard to the Chinese government and their change to what I think all of us agreed was a settlement that had stood the test of time, and that was helping to guarantee the freedoms of Hong Kongers in a way that I'm afraid, sadly, is now under real threat. And I think of lawyers and judges in other parts of the world, not least in places like Sri Lanka, where the independence and freedom of a whole part of that society has been one that has not just brought us together as supporters of the Tamil community, but has brought to the fore real concerns about not just the legacy of the war, but also the way in which the Sri Lankan government is to approach these issues in future. And I know reference has been made by colleagues to our manifesto commitments. They're real, they're tangible, they are, I think, of vital importance, not just to the community here in Britain, but also to friends in Sri Lanka, to know that we are not going to walk by on the other side and forget and ignore not just the consequences of those terrible times for the Tamil people in the northeast and elsewhere in Sri Lanka, but also what the future will bring with regard to the rule of law, justice and freedom for all parts of the population in that island. And I want to add my thanks to the Tamil community in my constituency and more widely for the engagement that they continue to show, not just in political life, but in the commercial, social and cultural life of our country. And whilst this year we might be facing perhaps some curtailed or virtual Diwali celebrations, as opposed to the riot of colour and noise and excitement that certainly I enjoy every year in Swindon, I know that the sentiments will still be very deeply held. That sentiment of hope, of optimism, of light and life, which underpins so much of those important celebrations. And to all my friends in the Tamil Conservative group, and indeed to all my friends in Swindon, I wish you very best wishes for the months ahead. I know that we will gather together in reality very soon again. And can I add my thanks to those of colleagues for the deep support and assistance that the group has given to candidates in those marginal seats, which no doubt contributed greatly to our eventual triumph back in December and our resounding electoral victory. That victory does seem to have been shrouded somewhat by the concerns and sadnesses of COVID, but it's no less real for that. It's only 10 months since we achieved that historic milestone, and there is so much as a Conservative party, as a Conservative government, that we are doing now and that we are going to do. And I'll end on this note, that the reforms I'm making to sentencing and justice in our country will not just help the Tamil community feel safer on our streets and in our homes, but the wider community as well, because without that degree of confidence in our justice and sentencing system, then the rule of law itself is called into question. And I, for one, do not want to see that happening, which is why I commend the reforms we're making to our justice system, and I once again thank everybody in the group for your warm invitation to join you this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Some incredible remarks that I know will resonate with a lot of people watching this evening. And one of the key themes that Robert mentioned was about not forgetting about why we're here and the importance of the work that we're doing. And it's with that in mind that we present this next video. A very poignant video there to remind us of the reason why we all work so hard on these issues. So next up in our lineup of speakers is a long-term friend, again, of the British Tamil Conservatives, is the Member of Parliament for Chipping Barnet. That is Teresa Villiers. Over to you.
Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in the meeting this evening. I never thought that I would be addressing a party conference fringe meeting from my kitchen table, but whilst it's not possible to gather together in person, I want to thank the British Tamil Conservatives for setting up this meeting as a really important means for the Conservatives to engage with the Tamil community, and also for us Conservative MPs to restate our strong commitment to justice and accountability in Sri Lanka for the Tamil people. It is, as others have said, it seems a long time now since the heady days of that landslide election victory, but I know very well that my being able to hold on and win in Chipping Barnet was in large part due to the fantastic support I had from my Tamil constituents and from Tamil friends coming from outside the constituency to help me. So I want to offer my really profound gratitude to all my Tamil friends for the incredible support that they gave me during the election and continue to give me in my highly marginal seat. And I'm happy to report that very shortly before the COVID emergency got started, I was able to visit Geneva, and I met a number of national delegations there to make the point strongly that the UNHCR resolutions need to be complied with. And if there is no progress via the UNHCR, then the international community has to think seriously about an alternative mechanism, a mechanism for international justice, if the Sri Lankan government refuses to comply with the obligations that itself took on and proposed in those vitally important UNHCR resolutions which the UK government under David Cameron was so important in securing. But that visit, as I say, was in the closing days before the lockdown started. But thankfully, I and the Tamil friends I went with came back unscathed by the virus. But it has been an incredibly difficult time in our country over the last 8 months. And I think today's event is an important and solemn moment to remember all the Tamils serving in the front line of our health and social care services. I mean, we all know there are huge numbers of British Tamils who have become doctors, but they fill all sorts of roles in our National Health Service, and it's heartbreaking that there have even been Tamils who have lost their lives to COVID as a result of the work they've done in the NHS. And in the debate on the COVID emergency, it was my honour and privilege to refer directly and quote from some of those brave Tamils who played such a crucial part in the COVID emergency, and I know are still working hard as we face a possible second wave of the virus. But I think there has been some useful progress in relation to Sri Lanka over recent months, not least of which is the final implementation of Magnitsky Act sanctions by the United Kingdom. Now, this gives the opportunity to target suspected war criminals in Sri Lanka with these sanctions. And I've called on the government to do that in relation to a number of individuals.